All right, so your quiz tomorrow is going to be on sections 3.1 through 3.4. The first part is imaginary numbers. So here we need to leave our answer in standard form. Standard form is a plus bi. So a is the real part and b is the imaginary part. So your real part has to come first. So looking at number 1a, so we can only add the real parts together and add the imaginary parts together. So we have 9 plus 11, which is 20. And 5i plus 2i? 7i. So 20 plus 7i. All right, for b. Here, again, we're just adding and subtracting everything, but before we do that, we have to distribute our negative. So this is 16 minus 2 plus 3i minus I. So we can only add our real numbers together and add our imaginary numbers together. So 16 minus 2 is 14, and 3i minus I plus 2i. So 14 plus 2i. So now for part C, we're multiplying, so we have to FOIL. So we multiply our first terms. What's 7 times 8? 56. Now 7 times negative 6i? Negative 42i. And then 5i times 8? 40i. And then 5i times negative 6i?
Negative 30i.
Negative 30i squared, because we have 2 i's.
Squared.
Thank you. So now we combine our like terms. So we have 56. We can add our negative 42i plus 40i. So this would be minus 2i. And then what happens to our I squared? What does I squared become? Negative 1. Remember, anytime you see an I squared, we change it to negative 1. So then what's negative 1 times negative 30? Positive 30, so plus 30. Now we have 2 more like terms to combine. So 56 plus 30 is 86 minus 2i. Any questions on this one? All right, D, again, we're foiling. So we multiply our first terms together, which is 81. Then our outsides, so 9 times negative 5i would be negative 45i. Then our insides, positive 45i, then our last terms, negative 25i squared. Now we combine our like terms. What happens to negative 45i and positive 45i?
Cancels out.
Cancel each other out. So then we have 81, and then what does the I squared become? Negative 1. So negative 25 times negative 1? Positive 25?
Yeah, sorry.
Sandeep, you're just a little too slow for the people in the car.
No, I just kind of, sorry.
No worries. I'm glad you're participating. All right, now 81 plus 25?
106.
Awesome. You beat them there. Good job. So our answer here is 106. All right, any questions from number 1? So for number 2, we have to find the value of x and y that satisfy the equation. So for these two questions, we set the real parts equal to each other and the imaginary parts equal to each other. So the parts that have an I in it, we have to set equal. The other parts are real parts, so the other parts we set equal to each other. So we have 6i is equal to yi, and 3x is equal to 27. Now we just solve both of these equations for x and then for y. So we divide both sides by 3. So x is equal to what? 9. And then for our second equation, we divide both sides by I. So our i's cancel out. So what do we get for y? 6.
6.
Well, it takes a long time to like unmute yourself, then answer the question. So
Yeah.
it's okay. All right, let's look at B. So we have 9x and negative 36 as our two real parts. So 9x is equal to negative 36. And then negative 18i and plus 6yi. So then we solve for x. We need to divide 9 on both sides. So x is equal to
Negative 4.
negative 4. And then in the second one, we divide both sides by 6i.
Negative 3.
Y is equal to negative 3. All right, any questions from number 2? All right, let's look at number 3. So we need to find the zeros of the function. So pretty much we're just factoring. So we need 2 factors of 2 that add and give us 3. So what would our 2 factors be? 1 and 2. So we put those into our parentheses. So we have x plus 1 and x plus 2 is equal to 0. Once we have them in our parentheses, we can break both of our parentheses up into 2 equations. So x plus 1 is equal to 0, and x plus 2 is equal to 0. And then we just solve for x. So we need to subtract 1 on both sides. X is equal to negative 1. And subtract 2 on both sides. So x is equal to negative 2. So these are our 2 solutions here. All right, let's look at B. What do we have to do first here? Move them all to one side. So I'm going to subtract 12x and add 48. So I get them to cancel out on one side. So now I have 2x squared. I can combine these two together to negative 28x plus 48 is equal to 0. Now anytime we're factoring or anytime we see an equation like this, it's always best to pull out our greatest common factor if we have one. So what would our greatest common factor be here?
12 and 4.
What do all of these have in common? 2. So we can divide everything here by 2. So now we have x squared minus 14x plus 24 is equal to 0. So this just makes our factoring a little bit easier. So anytime we see a greatest common factor, we can divide that out to everything. Now do we have 2 factors of 24 that add to negative 14?
6 and 4. Sorry. 12 and 2.
Remember, 6 and 4 are factors of 24, but 6 plus 4 is not negative 14. So we need them to add up to negative 14. No problem. So what goes in our parentheses?
X.
So x minus 12 because it's a negative 12.
Oh yeah, and then x minus 2.
So just remember, even though this is a plus 24, two negatives multiplied together give you a positive, so that's why we can have two negatives. And then negative 12 minus 2 would give us negative 14. So then this is equal to 0. So we set each of our equations here equal to 0. So what do you guys get for x?
12 and 2.
X
Positive.
is equal to 12 and x is equal to 2. All right, we have one more here. Let's look at C. What should we do first?
Move it to one side.
Move it to one side. So we can either move the 6x and the 3 to the other side, or we can move the 3x squared. So I'm just going to move the 3x squared to the other side. You would get the same answer no matter which you move. So you can move everything to the left or move everything to the right. So now you have 0 is equal to negative 3x squared plus 6x minus 3. What can we do next?
Divide all of them by 3.
We can divide all of them by negative 3, just so we get rid of that negative out front. So now we're left with 0 is equal to x squared minus 2x plus 1. So what are two factors of 1 that give us negative 2?
Negative 1. Yeah.
Negative 1 and negative 1. Is negative 1 times negative 1 gives us positive 1. Negative 1 minus 1 is a negative 2. So now what goes into our parentheses?
X minus 1, x minus 1.
X minus 1 and x minus 1. So we can split these into two equations. So x minus 1 is equal to 0. X minus 1 is equal to 0. What do you get for x? 1. So x is equal to 1 is our answer. All right, any questions from number, what number was this? 3. All right, let's move on to 4. So we need to solve number 4. What should we do first here? Well, we can't distribute the negative because we have parentheses that are squared. Yes. All right, again, we can't distribute the negative because we have parentheses that are squared. But can we move the negative somewhere else? We can divide both sides by negative 1. So now we have x plus 9 squared is equal to negative 64. Now what can we do? Take the square root of both sides. So x plus 9 is equal to, what is the square root of negative 64?
8.
Just
Negative 8.
Just 8i? Plus or minus. Remember, you can't forget that plus or minus because then you're missing half the answer. Now how do we get the 9 to the other side?
Subtract.
Subtract 9. So how would we write our answer? Negative 9 plus or minus 8i. So remember, we have to write it in standard form, so our real number has to come first. All right, so let's look at B. So again, we're solving. If we see that we have a perfect square on the left and a perfect square on the right, then we don't need to move all of our terms to one side. So do we have a perfect square on the left side? Yeah, what are our two factors of 4 that add and give us 4? So then we have x plus 2 squared is equal to 36. So now what can we do? So what do we do next? Take the square root. So x plus 2 is equal to what? Plus or minus 6. So now we want to split this up into two equations. So x plus 2 is equal to positive 6 and x plus 2 is equal to negative 6, just because we can simplify our answer once we move 2 over to the other side. So we have x is equal to 4 and x is equal to negative 8. So in the last one,
why is there no? Sorry, why is there no I?
because this is a positive number. When we take the square root of a negative, that's when we get I.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
No problem. The only time we leave our answer with a plus or minus in it is when we can't combine our terms. But here we can combine negative 2 and 6 and negative 2 and negative 6. So we simplify our answer one step further. So if we had negative 2 plus or minus 6, we can simplify this into two real numbers. So we wouldn't leave our answer like this. So the only time you can leave your answer with a plus or minus is when you can't combine them. So if you had an I or a square root. All right, any questions on 4? All right, let's move on to 5. So solve by completing the square. We did 5b in class, so let's look at 5a. What's our formula to complete the square? What's that little formula we have to know? b over 2 squared. So we need to add this b over 2 squared to get a perfect square in our equation. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides just to get that 5 out of the way now. So I have x squared plus 8x is equal to 5. And I'm going to add something in this space here so I have a perfect square on the left. So I'm adding my b over 2 squared, which my b is what? 8. So 8 over 2 squared. What's 8 over 2? 4. And 4 squared is 16. So I'm adding 16 in here. If I add it to the left side, I have to add it to the right side. Now I can write my perfect square in my parentheses. So what goes in the parentheses?
X plus 4.
X plus 4. So remember, we get what goes in the parentheses from our parentheses here. So x plus 4 squared is equal to what?
21.
21. Now what do we do to solve?
Square root both. Get the square root of both sides.
Take the square root of both sides. So x plus 4 is equal to what?
Plus or minus the square root of 21.
Awesome. Plus or minus the square root of 21. Now what's the last step we need to do?
Subtract 4 from both sides.
Perfect. Subtract 4 on both sides. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus square root 21. And here we just leave our answer with the plus or minus because we can't combine a whole number with a square root. So 6, we need to solve the equation using the quadratic formula. So our quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And we get our a, b, and c from our equation. So we plug everything in. Negative 2 becomes a positive 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared, minus 4 times a times c, over 2 times a. And now we simplify. So we pretty much just have to do all the math under the square root first. So negative 2 squared is 4, and 4 times 6 times 1, 24, over 12, Now we have 4 minus 24, which is negative 20 over 12. Can we simplify the square root of negative 20? What does it simplify to? 5 and 4. 4.
Negative 4, right?
And yeah, we can take out the I. So we know since there's a negative under the square root, our answer is going to have an I in it. And then the square root of 4 is 2, so we're going to take out a 2 also. And then we're just left with 5 under our square root. So this is now 2 plus or minus 2I square root 5 over 12. Can we simplify this anymore?
Yeah, like 1 and 6.
What number do we have in common between all of our terms?
2.
2. So we're going to divide everything by 2. So we have 1 plus or minus I square root 5 over 6.
6.
So you just have to simplify as much as possible. Any questions on this one? All right, let's go to B. What's the first thing we should do here? We can move the 4x to the other side. If we wanted to move the negative 5x squared and the negative 6, we could, but we can just move the 4x. It's important here that we keep them in order, so we have our x squared term, then our x term, and then our minus 6. So this way we can see what's our A, what's our B, and what's our C. So now we just plug in. So we have negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4 times negative 5 times negative 6 over 2 times negative 5. Now we need to simplify everything under our square root. So 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times 5 times 6. So this would be 120. What is 16 minus 120?
Negative 136.
Negative 104.
Oh.
I think you added them, but we're subtracting.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so now we can simplify negative 104. We're going to take our negative out. We know we're going to have an I in our answer. What are 2 factors of 104? 2 and 52. What are 2 factors of 52? 4 and 13. 2 factors of 4 are 2 and 2, and then 13 is prime. So I take out all of my pairs. So I'm going to have a 2i on the outside, and what am I left with on the inside? 26. So 2 times 13 on the inside. Everything that doesn't have a pair stays on the inside. So now I have negative 4 plus or minus 2i square root 26 over negative 10. Can I simplify this? What does it simplify to? Awesome. So we divided everything by negative 2. So we could say 2 plus or minus I square root 26 over 5. Or if you wanted to divide everything by 2, we could say negative 2 plus or minus I square root 26 over negative 5. So either way would work. I would accept both of these as the correct answer. Alright, 7 says find the discriminant and describe the type of solutions. What's our formula for discriminant? Remember, it's just everything under the square root. So what's under the square root? B squared minus 4ac. So what do we have to do first for A? What do we do first? Move it all to one side. Perfect. So we have 0 is equal to negative x squared plus 2x plus 15. So what's our b?
2.
2. So 2 squared minus 4. What's our a?
1. Negative 1.
Negative 1, because it's a negative x squared. And then what's our c?
15.
15. So now we have 4 times
Negative 1.
So this would be negative 4 times negative 1 times 15. So what would that give us?
Negative 60.
If we have a negative and a negative, our answer is going to be positive. So positive 60. So now 4 plus 60 is 64. So our discriminant is 64. And what does this tell us about our type of solutions? 2 real solutions. Okay, let's look at B. What do we do first here? Add 3 to both sides. So we have 4x squared plus 9x plus 3. What's our b? 9. So we have 9 squared minus 4 times, what's our a? 4. And what's our c? So 9 squared is 81. Minus 4 times 4 is 16. And 16 times 3 is 48. So what's 81 minus 48? 33. So our discriminant is 33. And what does this tell us about our type of solutions? Two real solutions. So just remember, when you have a negative discriminant, that means you're going to have 2 imaginary solutions. When your discriminant 0, you have 1 real solution. And when your discriminant is positive, you have 2 real solutions. One thing I wanted to go over real quick is looking at example 5. So we got to the step where we have x plus 4 squared is equal to 21. How do we get this equation into vertex form? How do we get this equation in vertex form? I'm asking anyone who's listening. We did a few of these problems in the homeworks, but there wasn't any on the review. But just in case it shows up on your quiz, I wanted to go over this. Remember, vertex form is x minus h squared plus k. So we just want all of our terms on one side, so we would subtract 21 on both sides. So this is x plus 4 squared minus 21. So what would our vertex be here? So negative 4, because we changed the sign of our h, and then what's our k?
Negative 21.
Negative 21. So if you have
That's it.
if you have an equation like this, you can just move all your terms to one side and easily see what your vertex is. So that's it.
Okay.
So I
Thank you.
just wanted to show you guys an example of that.